Today I'm going to be taking a look at another budget action camera. This one is the Gitup Git1, and in the video I'm also going to be doing some side-by-side video comparison with my current favourite mini budget boxy action camera, which is a Dazzne P2. But let's get back to that name for a second, the Git1. Now this might not be funny to people in all countries, but in the UK the term Git is an offensive thing that you call people. I'm showing you some dictionary definitions on the screen here, and as you can see it's not a pleasant word, so to have the product be called a Git1 is pretty funny to people in the UK. However, I know it won't be funny all around the world, and obviously they didn't mean it when they called it that, so let's get over that and move on. Let's have a look at the back of the box at these specs. As you can see, they're a little bit hard to see against that picture. Going down them here, I can see it's got a 1.5-inch LCD screen on here. It does 1080p 30, 720p 30. It also says it'll take a micro SD card up to 64 gigs, and it finishes at the bottom there with weights and dimensions. Now, the most important things for me are on the front of the box. On the right hand side here, there is an option to buy an additional remote control for the device, and it will accept a microphone in. I'm going to spend quite a bit of time on that feature later on, but let's have a look what you get inside the box to start with. Well, it's standard sort of setup here. We've got two mounts, one slightly curved, one flat. They need to be attached to these adhesive pads on the back of those. We've got a mini USB to full-size USB for charging and data transfer, little lens cap there, two sort of elbow joint type things with screws for those, tripod screw mount, and then finally a bicycle handlebar mount. Just get those out of the way and have a look at the camera itself. Right, well, we've got first off a glass lens on the front there, which is a good start. 3 buttons on the case, which correspond with the 3 buttons on the camera. Quite an oblong type case here. On the back we've got a 1.5-inch screen in the middle there. You can see it through the back, and this mechanism is really quite good. Different to ones I've seen before. To open it, you squeeze that little thing, then twist it around, and then you open the case from the side, a side hinge. I haven't seen that on any other action cameras, and it does work really well. Seems a much better mechanism than most of the ones I've tested on budget cams. I have noticed one thing here though. They've put the wrong screw into that base. You see it's fouling on the case. You can't tighten it or loosen it, so it took a little bit of waggling to get that out of there. Somebody in the factory got mixed up obviously, so we'll take that screw out, put the longer one in. That's the one that's supposed to be in there. So if you do get one of these and you find you've got that problem, just swap your screw out and put the right one on at the bottom there. Now there's the remote control. I'll show you how that operates later on. This is an optional extra. It did come with mine though. I don't know, you'll have to look what pack you get. And there's the microphone, which is your sort of lavalier mic you clip on your shirt, and the other end of that braided cable is terminated in a mini USB plug. Now the camera itself has got a button on the front for turning it on. We've got LEDs there, that's your shutter or OK button, another sort of LED through a tube there. Screen on the back, say 1.5 inches, quite small really, another LED tube there, and then on the bottom here behind this, that's your removable battery. You only get the one in this pack as opposed to the 2 that you get in most Dazzne P2 packs, and no external charger. Of course, you've got to charge it in the camera. Mini USB, micro HDMI out, a microphone and a vent on that side. Then on this side we've got a little button there to get into some settings, another LED there, and micro SD card there. I've just took a 32 gig class 10 in mind to test it out, but I say it does take up to 64 gigs. Notice no tripod screw hole on the bottom of that, which is quite important. Now let's turn it on. Hold down the button on the front here for, I don't know, about 3 seconds or so to get it on, which is a good thing. Light comes on the back there. You can see you've got usual information around the screen here. It shows we're in the video mode, so press the mode button on the front. It's the on-off button, but it's now the mode button. Goes into the photo mode, press it again, video playback, and press it again. We get into the system settings, and then press it finally. We're back to the beginning in the video mode again. To start it recording, tap the button on the top. You can see the red light flashing there. Flashes on the back and on the top and on the front as well. And then obviously press it to stop it recording. Now just press that button on the front there again just to get into the playback mode, and you see here you can play back the video you've recorded on the screen by pressing the button on the side and pressing the button on the top to play it. The buttons on this are pretty confusing. Trying to figure out which button does what thing, you get yourself in a bit of a muddle. It's like sort of playing Twister with your fingers, but as you can see here we get into one setup menu off the front there, and then if we press the button on the side here, you get into a setup menu corresponding to the mode you're in. So this is the video setup menu. There'll be another setup menu for the photos, and there's another set of options in there. It does take some getting used to that. And then finally, if you hold that button down a couple of seconds, see the blue light comes on next to it, and that shows the Wi-Fi has come on, and it shows you the password on there as well. Then obviously to turn it off, hold down the button on the front for a couple of seconds. Now it's important about that power button that you have to hold it down to switch it on, because that's a very important feature to stop you accidentally switching it on in your pocket. The Dazzne P2, I'm always switching it on when I don't want to. I just move it across the desk, put it in a bag, I've switched it on by accident. Whereas on the Git1, having to hold it down for a couple of seconds means that you're not going to do that. In fact, that's probably my most disliked feature about the Dazzne P2, believe it or not. Now, while I've got both cameras here, I might as well show you the dimensions side by side. So you can see the Git1 is slightly smaller than the P2, but the thing that is quite different are the weights. These are grams, 65.4 grams for the Git1 and 93.2 for the P2, or 93.3. Now, ounces, that's 3.3 ounces approximately, as opposed to the Git 2.3, so quite a bit lighter for the model aircraft type folk. It doesn't actually feel as substantial. The Dazzne does feel a little bit better made, especially things like the battery cover seem quite solid, and in particular the screen on the Dazzne P2 is quite a bit larger than on the Git1, but that's pretty much the only difference between them really. Now let's have a look at some sample clips. I do have downloadable samples available. You'll see a link to those in the video description. We'll start off with the bike. I want to point out I've got the mount in my pocket here and it's gone slightly diagonal, so I'm not leaning. Unfortunately the camera is leaning a little bit, but it gives you a bit of an idea as to the video quality from the Git1. Bit of an overcast day this, but it's nice and clear, nice and sharp edge to edge. As I mentioned there at the bottom, I shot everything in the wide field of view mode. I tend to find that if you change the field of view to these narrower ones, all you're doing is cropping in on the image and reducing your image quality, so always better to stick to the wide field of view options. Now I also want to show you some footage that I shot with this in the car, and just look for the BMW coming up in the middle lane, well in the fast lane, and then doing a ridiculous manoeuvre just as we get into the exit. There you go, brilliant. Pull in front and then brake as well, excellent. Now the weird thing about that was, in my rear view mirror there was literally half a mile of empty road behind me, so why I had to pull in front, we'll never know. Now I'm not playing this clip just to show you a guy driving like a turd. There is a proper reason behind this. Just look as I go under this gantry now. You see it jump back in time a little bit, and that was because I joined two clips together. I was using it in dashcam mode, and when you join the clips together you'll find that each clip replays a fraction of a second of the previous one. And there he goes off again, driving his own car like he's stolen it. Always a good idea. But the thing with this camera is you can use it as a dash cam, which means it'll auto start and stop and loop over the oldest footage. That's if you want to. Of course it is really an action camera, but I'm taking it out around Manchester to give you some shots that I've taken with other cameras to give you an idea how it copes with light and dark and that kind of stuff. Now during the course of this footage I'm going to show you some side-by-side video that I've taken with the Dazzne P2. So I'm going to split the screen down the middle and bring the P2 in from the right. So look at these phone boxes here, look a bit orange there, don't they? Bring the P2 in, that's definitely got a redder colour to it, that's probably more accurate. Look at the sky as I pan around here. Notice the P2's got it blue, the Git1 seems to be bleaching it out, but also look at those hoardings there, seem to be different colours, don't they? One's green and one's yellow. Pan up to the sky, the P2's definitely got better sky there, a bit blue, you can see the cloud a little bit better. But both cameras have a slightly different way of handling things, but I'm not exactly going to say one's miles better than the other, and you wouldn't really notice it unless you tried them side by side like I'm doing now. Now of course neither camera has a built-in stabilizer, as you can see here. I'm walking with a bit of a limp there, I think I've got sciatica, but you can see that they're not really smoothing anything out, but you can make out what's going on. I'm using this shot here mainly because I'm able to go through these doorways and we can see how quickly they adjust between lighting conditions. As you can see again, very little in it, although the P2 seems to be a little bit worse in that regard, a little bit bleached out on that one. So it's not much in it at all as far as video quality goes. Again, we'll have a look at this one here. P2 seems slightly better there, again with the sky more blue, you can see what's going on. Git1 perhaps slightly dark in this situation. And then we'll pan around to the right and just see how they cope with the change in lighting. Yeah, I prefer the P2 on that shot. It's funny, isn't it? You get slight differences between them. But you're not going to get one of these and say it's twice as good as the other one. Both cameras do a very good job, really. And as I mentioned on screen right at the beginning of these tests, all the settings are auto, white balance is 0, everything's just set to straight down the middle, auto settings that you get out of the box. Let's just have a little listen to the sound quality with the camera out of its case. camera's got a very sensitive microphone which is designed to pick sound up when it's in its waterproof case, which means that when you take it out of the case sometimes things peek out a little bit. Now this is a traditional shot I do with all the cameras. You can see there on the P2 on the right hand side quite a bit brighter, notice especially down at the bottom where things are quite dark. So that's definitely a difference, but if we show them one after the other, you can see maybe the P2 is kind of over bright in a way and the Git1's perhaps a little bit too dark, but we'll have a look inside the Printworks here, which is a darker environment, and if I spin around first off with the Git1 and then we bring in the P2 from the right hand side, you can see both of those look pretty similar in this environment. So again, I think it's just random which one looks better in which situation, so nothing wrong at all with the Git1's video quality. One thing that is a little bit of an issue though, the photos. If you're into taking photos with an action camera, you're in a very small minority, but I should mention that the photos that you take, stills with the Git1, are pretty much just frame grabs, whatever resolution you use. I'll show you now. So we'll freeze frame this video and we'll zoom in on those signs there. Look at the quality, what you can read, basically nothing on that. And then here's a still I took in the same situation, which is perhaps 40 megapixels or something ridiculous. It doesn't look any better at all really for the amount of detail in it. And that is a pretty big difference between the Git1 and the Dazzne P2, because the Git1's frame grabs for photos, whereas the P2 proper higher resolution stills, as you can see here. Hopefully, even though you're watching this on YouTube in a maximum of 1080p, you can see the difference in quality between the two cameras as far as stills go. Now as far as stats for the Git1 goes, the bit rate 17.10 megabits a second fixed bit rate. The battery life, I got 2 hours 15 out of one battery that was fully charged, 1080p 30 with the LCD screen turned off and of course Wi-Fi off as well. Now I'll show you the optional extras I got. So first off here is the RF remote. You can take stills or start and stop video, turn the camera off, but obviously you can't turn it on because it has to be on to be able to receive the signal from the remote, and also you can turn the Wi-Fi on or off from that button at the top there, so that works quite well. Okay, let's talk about microphones for a second. At the moment I'm talking to you through the built-in mic. However, the Git1 does have the ability for you to plug in an external mic using the USB socket. Now it does come with its own microphone, which has a mini USB plug on the end. However, you can also use GoPro adapters for microphones to be able to plug in any microphone you want, but there is a little bit of a caveat to that. I'll show you that in a second, but first off let me just plug the lavalier mic in so I can talk to you a little bit clearer. Okay, so I'm now talking to you through the microphone that came inside the box, but as I mentioned you can plug other mics in with that adapter, but the issue I was having was I've got quite a few different lavalier mics here, from a no brand one to a condenser mic with a battery in it to one from Boyer, but the only one that worked was this Sony microphone. Now I'll plug that in to demonstrate what that sounds like and I'll explain what's going on. Okay, so now I'm talking to you through the Sony microphone. You better hear me pretty clearly through this one as well, and of course this is plugged into that GoPro adapter, but the issue I was having with these other ones is they're just too quiet. I'll just plug one in quickly to demonstrate what the problem is.
I bet you can hardly hear me, so I best plug the original microphone back in again.
So it seems like the camera's quite picky with the mics it'll work with. Maybe it needs a very sensitive one or something, but at least I managed to find another microphone it does work with. It's a lot better situation than I was getting with the Dazzne P2. This camera I just can't get to work with the mic in. I've bought a few different adapters for it. The GoPro ones don't work, but I bought some that are supposed to work with the Dazzne P2 and P3 and they just don't work at all with either camera. So if you want a cheap camera or a budget action camera with mic in, then the Git1 is one of a very small number of cameras that offer this feature. Now if you noticed a bit of a weird jarring edit during that section, you weren't mistaken. It was because I took a whole section out where I was going on about the fact that if you plug a microphone into the camera you've got no way to mount the camera to anything, because you have to mount it using the waterproof case and then that doesn't let you plug the microphone into the side of the camera. But I was mistaken. You can do it, you just have to buy some optional extras. There's a frame mount and a holder mount that are available, and you can find those on the Gitup website, and you can see they're only $7 a piece, and it enables you to use it either as a dash cam or mount it with the power and microphone in the side. And you can see there's a lot of other optional extra mounts on there as well. So yeah, you can't mount it with the waterproof case, but there are alternatives available. I plugged in a micro HDMI lead and put it through my capture software. As you can see, we've got video on screen now of what's happening, a live video feed. One thing you can't do though is press record. Well, you can press it, but nothing will happen. The camera won't record if it's got the HDMI lead plugged in. It will let you go through the various menus though, and of course we can get into the playback menu, which is the main reason for it, but also we can get into the settings, so I can show you those nice and clear on screen now. Now there's not an awful lot to go on about here. As they go through, you'll see at the top it describes exactly what's going on in the menu, and then of course you change the little icon further down. A little bit fiddly to get through because they're all sequential. You have to keep pressing the button to get into the next one and then cycle through all the options. But as you can see, everything's pretty clear on screen here. There's not an awful lot in this camera. It's a pretty simple camera really, so none of these settings will take you by surprise, but there are a couple of nice little features in here. You notice the RF one there, that's just for pairing it up with the wristwatch type thing, the remote control, but it comes paired anyway, or mine did, it works straight away. There's the version of mine on screen now, that's the firmware of course. Now I'm going to go into the video menu here. Look at the top, you can see the resolutions, but also the frames per second are shown on the left there in the blue bit. So everything's 30 frames per second until you get down to WVGA. It doesn't have a 720p 60 mode, this one. If you're using it as a dash cam, those are your loop recording segment lengths there, and of course you can turn the mic on and off, and obviously you can turn the date stamp on or off. Bottom left here, time lapse. This is quite good actually. 1 frame per second, 5 frames per second, or 10 frames per second in time lapse mode, and it'll just make a video for you with a 10 frame per second sped up. So it's a really nice effect actually. It works quite well, that one. I haven't shown you any footage of that because I haven't got anything decent to show you. But timer mode will let you take a still at the intervals that you specify at the same time it's taking video. So every say 10 seconds it'll take a still, and you can also manually take stills while you're taking video by pressing the button on the front of the camera. The field of view, I took everything in the wide angle field of view to get the full image quality as we mentioned earlier on, and of course all the shots were taken with wide dynamic range on as well. Then we've got things like exposure value and white balance, things I always leave on auto, but if you're really into this you could adjust the white balance to suit by moving it between blue and red on the screen there. Auto exposure lock thing, I'll show you what this means. This little button on the side here, you can have that as like a shortcut button. So when you're recording, you've got to be recording, you can press that button and it'll show what's going on in that menu. So exposure and white balance locked, exposure and white balance lock off. So it's like a shortcut, and this is where you change what appears on that button. So you can have exposure lock, white balance lock, exposure value and white balance lock, or mute the audio. And those are the things you can have on that little button on the side. Quite a handy little feature that. Saves you going into the menus. Motion detection, haven't really messed with that. G sensor, you can set it low, medium and high. So those are all your settings in the camera. That's pretty much everything apart from the photo menu, which is not worth messing with. This little card came inside the box about the Wi-Fi function. Said they haven't got their own app ready yet, so why don't you use a thing called Final Cam? So I downloaded Final Cam, and it's actually a really nice little piece of Wi-Fi software. Start off, usual thing, add your camera in, find out your Wi-Fi details here, turn the Wi-Fi on the camera, connect up to it, put the password in that it showed on the screen there, and then the camera appears inside the app. As you can see here, we get a live video feed. Usual thing with Wi-Fi, you get a bit of a lag on it, but it's not bad at all on this camera. It's quite a bit better than some others that I've seen. And looking at a direct feed off the screen here, you can change all the settings on the main screen whilst also looking at the video feed. And if you start recording, it goes blank for a second, but then it does carry on giving you a video feed of the camera whilst it's recording. And you can get into the files you've recorded that are on the memory card on the camera itself. And to play back any of these, you have to download them. So you click one there. I've picked a short one. As you can see, it's downloading, little progress meter going around there. So I'll fast forward in time a little bit because we don't have all the day to look at this. But there you go. It's downloaded to the app in the phone now. It enables us to play back that particular video file, and of course now it's in the phone, you can edit it, send it to people, all that kind of stuff. So overall, a nice little Wi-Fi app. It works well, pretty robust, didn't crash out on me. It's the first time I've ever used a Wi-Fi app which I didn't absolutely hate, so that's pretty good. Now people always ask me, how far will the Wi-Fi signal travel? And I always give the same answer, about as far as you could throw a house brick. Don't expect to be recording stuff from the other end of the street and using it over Wi-Fi. Now, inevitably, every time I review a new budget action camera, there's quite a few people that are going to ask, what's my current favourite? Is it a Git1, a P2, one of the SJ cams, perhaps the Xiaomi Yi? I'm going to say it's got to come down to these two here, and I'm going to pick the Git1, purely because it has that microphone input that actually works, and it's got the delayed power on button, which means I don't accidentally switch the damn thing on every time I touch it. Now, if you want to get hold of a Git1, there's links to purchase it up in the video description, and up there you'll also find links to downloadable sample clips. But that's it for the moment. As always, thanks for watching.